Today we're going to focus on forms, whether that's a contact form or a registration form. What are the necessary HTML elements that we must use in order to display those types of elements? Let's first look at an example. I'm going to refer back to NetTouch, and here's an article. If I scroll down to the bottom, you can see that we have a contact form, and this allows us to enter our name, an email address, a URL, and our comments so that we can leave some feedback related to this article. So I want you to note these are HTML elements. This is a text box. This is a text area. And down here we have a submit button. So how can we create these? Let's dig in. We will open up our code editor. We have a blank skin again. And first we have to tell the browser that we do want to display a form. So we're going to wrap it within a form element. Now a form will likely have two attributes minimum. One will be an action attribute and the next will be method. Now method, it's a little higher level than you are right now, but it describes how the contents of your form, meaning the values that you type into those inputs in those text areas, are transmitted to your server-side language of choice. By default, this will be set to GET, meaning they are transmitted through the URL. However, there's also a method called POST, and you might do this in situations where you need a little bit more security. For now though, I don't want you to worry about this too much because it's beyond the scope of this course. You'll want to take a look at a server-side language like PHP for processing form data. Here, we're only focusing on creating the forms. And the action attribute specifies when you click the submit button of your form, where should that data be posted to? By default, it's going to post to the current page. However, if I decide I want to post that data to maybe contact.php, we can do that by specifying it right here. For now, I'm going to leave it blank and I'll leave it open like this so you remember there is an action attribute, but it will post to the current page. Next, we want to create a text box, and we do that by creating an input element. So let's go ahead and self-close it for the time being and see what we get when we view this in the browser. And there we are. As you would expect, we get a text box, which I can then click in and type. Now, I see two big problems with this though. One, we can enter all the text we want, but there's no button there, so we can't submit the data and it can't be processed. So that's the next step, is we should create a submit button. Now we can do that, believe it or not, by using the exact same element. Input can be used to describe a text box, a button, or even checkboxes and radio buttons. So in this case, we're going to specify that the type of input should be a submit button. Now, when I reload the page, there's your button. Good. Notice how it says submit by default, but what if you wanted to say something different, such as go? You can do that by specifying a value attribute. Value is going to be go. Now if I reload the page, we've updated that accordingly. Now the next problem is we have our text box right here, but the visitor to your website is going to have no clue what that text box represents. Are they supposed to enter their name, their email address, a search query? You have to tell them. So we need to provide some kind of label for them. Okay, well let's use a label element, and we'll place it right here before label, and we'll say enter your name, like so. Now if I reload the page, there we are. We have a label that corresponds to a text box. Next, it's very common when you view a form, your natural instinct might be to click on the label, hoping that that will then trigger the text box. So when you click on the label, the text box then becomes active. How would we do that? Well, we need to associate the label with the input. In this case, we can say label, what is it for? What is it connected to? And we can associate it by providing a value. We'll say here name. And now to connect it, we're going to provide an ID to this input called name. Now if I save it and I reload the page, when I click on label, you'll notice that the text box instantly becomes active. And this provides just a little bit more usability.